Dollar. Dirt and money, no soul. Had to go and get it, ain't no time to kick it. Got a stack and flip for my foes. Dollar. Please tell me you can hear me. Don't turn your back and don't neglect me. Just let me know if you need me. Dollar. Let me watch out for my partners. Keep my money long, get my team strong. Let me run away from my problems.
Yo, what's good, original crew, man? We're back. New Ballen. Psychic arrested for helping police. We got another top 3 strange, but yet true for y'all today, man. Hey, this is going to be a good one, hopefully, man. So, with that being said, before we get into it, make sure you check out the links in the description box.
Down below.
You already know where to go. If you want to first support, all you have to do is check out down below. Also, if you enjoyed today's video,
don't get it with a thumbs up.
I would highly appreciate it. But we don't need to waste no time. Let's go ahead and get into it. We got a good one and long one today. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right, let's get into it, y'all.
Today, we're going to look at 3 stories that sound totally made up, but they are all actually true. But before we get into those stories, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place because that's all we do, and we upload once a week. So, if that's of interest to you, the next time you're over the Like Button's house, sneak into their closet and replace all of their shoe insoles with pudding skins. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all...
What the fuck is pudding skin? What's that?
It's down, whatever.
All of their shoe insoles with pudding skins. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Okay, let's get into today's stories. On the morning of December 21st, 1980, a woman in her 40s walked into a jail cell in Los Angeles, California.
That's my bad.
I'm ready.
I got it. My bad. I'm trying to find out what the hell pudding excuses. Like,
Sorry.
On the morning of December 21st, 1980, a woman in her 40s walked into a jail cell in Los Angeles, California. Now, in this jail cell already was another inmate. Her name was Etta Louise Smith. She was 32 years old, and at the time, she was laying on one of the benches inside of this cell. Etta had actually been in jail for 4 days leading up to this moment. The police were sure Etta had something to do with the savage murder of a nurse in the area, but they really didn't understand what role she had played. In fact, virtually everything about Etta was very confusing to police. And Etta herself was not really doing herself any favors because she wasn't really explaining how she had the information that she had. Now, Etta had already gone through a 10-hour-long interrogation, which led police nowhere. She had undergone a polygraph test, which didn't lead to any new answers. And she had also undergone a thorough strip search. She had been kept without food for 24 hours at one point. She had been left in this cold jail cell without shoes for 4 days. But she just wouldn't crack. She would not confess to playing a role in this murder. And so this was why police on this day had decided to go another route to get information out of Etta. That woman in her 40s who had just walked into Etta's jail cell was pretending to be an inmate, but in reality, she was an undercover cop. And her job was to go into this jail cell, befriend Etta, win her trust, and see if maybe then Etta would begin revealing information about what she had done. And so after this undercover cop walked into the jail cell, the jailer shut the door behind them, closing in the undercover cop and Etta. And at this point, Etta was woken up by the noise and she sat up on her bench and she looked over at the undercover cop. And the cop, she was immediately struck by Etta's appearance. Etta did not look like a murderer. She was this little, slight, totally unthreatening person who really just looked like a suburban mom who maybe had a white-collar job. But the undercover cop also knew that appearing to be totally harmless was a great cover for being a murderer, and so this could all totally be an act. And also, to this undercover cop, it just seemed like Etta was way too calm and collected given her circumstances. She is effectively wanted for murder, and the police are putting so much pressure on her to get her to speak about it, and she's just laying down sleeping in her cell, making no big deal about it. But the undercover cop maintained a very neutral persona, and she sat down, and at some point she asked Etta, hey, what are you in here for? And Etta, she kind of just looked down and smiled for a second. And then when she looked back up at the undercover cop, she said, you're never going to believe me. The undercover cop at this said, oh, come on, how bad could it be? Tell me what's going on here. Why are you in here? And it was at this point that Etta would say something that nearly caused the cop to break character. Because Etta, she would say, well, I'm pretty sure this is going to be a movie. Now, the undercover police officer tried...
Hold on. But one part in the story I was thinking, I was like, could you do something like that?
Do something like what?
Because you wanted to go to school at one point for criminal justice, right? So say, for instance, you became a detective, you know what I'm saying? And you had to go undercover. Or if you chose to do the undercover job, because, could you go put yourself in jail for however long it might take to be an inmate? So you got to follow the rules. You ain't no police officer, no. You an inmate. Could you do that? I don't think you could.
Yeah, I could.
Nah, see, I don't think you could.
Why?
Knowing you,
What does that mean? Knowing me?
how you are not trying to even spend
See, I don't even know what that
2
means.
seconds in jail.
I don't even know what that means.
You're not even. So, would you, if you had the opportunity to sign up for 60 days in, would you?
I ain't doing that. No.
That's the same
I
thing.
have a job to do. I'm not
It's the
doing
same.
that.
It's the same thing.
No, I'm not. That's different.
You still getting paid for it, so it's still a job.
That's a little different. This
Nah.
for real, my job, my career.
Nah.
Y'all doing this for no, child.
Nah.
They be going
well,
through it.
I'm pretty sure this is going to be a movie. Now, the undercover police officer tried to be as neutral as possible as she's hearing this, but in her mind, she's like, okay, well, I clearly just discovered Etta's motive for being involved in this murder. Etta wants to be famous. She wants this made into a movie where she's the star. At the same time this conversation was happening, in an office within the jailhouse, a police captain was listening in on the conversation between Etta and this undercover cop. And when he listened to Etta talk about wanting to turn her story into a movie, he just shook his head in disgust because Etta had just brought police to the location of the body of 31-year-old Melanie Uribe, a local nurse who was robbed and savagely beaten to death and then dumped in a canyon behind a bush. And now here Etta was talking about how she could get publicity around this terrible, horrible crime. It just did not sit right with the captain. And so as the captain was sitting there kind of watching this conversation transpire between the undercover cop and Etta, the captain was beginning to form a theory of what actually happened to Melanie Uribe and how Etta played a role in her murder. His theory went like this. 6 days earlier, the victim, Melanie Uribe, had left for her shift at the hospital in Burbank, California, which is a suburb of Los Angeles, but she had never arrived for her shift. And so when her colleagues had noticed her absence, eventually the police were called and a search was launched to find her. But after 48 hours, the police had not found Melanie and there were no signs as to what happened to her. She had just vanished. And it was at that point, 2 days after Melanie had gone missing, that Etta just showed up at the police station and said she knew where Melanie was. And so the detective who was talking to Etta at the time when she came in and said this, he brought out a map and he said, okay, point to where she is. And Etta had immediately pointed to this area on the map called Lopez Canyon, which was about 25 miles away from Los Angeles. And she would tell the detective that, yeah, Melanie is somewhere right in there. When the detective asked Etta, how do you know this? Etta would say she just knew. And then when the detective followed up and said, Etta, this is pretty incriminating that you're telling me you know where someone's body is. What's motivating you to come and say this to me? And Etta would say that her conscience was weighing on her terribly and she just had to go to police. Now, the detective who talked to Etta when she first came into the police station really didn't know what to make of Etta because she looked so unthreatening, and what she was saying, she was saying with a lot of confidence, and it seemed like she was really eager to help the investigation versus just clearing her conscience, which is kind of what she said she was doing. And when the detective looked into who Etta was, he discovered that she had a great job. She worked at an aerospace company in Burbank, California, and she even had governmental clearance. And so this woman clearly has been vetted by the government and by high-level companies, and she's passed the tests. But at the same time, the detective knew there was no good reason for why Etta would have this information, the location of a dead body. I mean, either she's just wrong and there is no body there, Or if the body's there, the most likely scenario is that Etta was involved in killing this person or disposing of their body, or maybe both. So the detective said to Etta, hey, come back tomorrow and we'll take a police helicopter, we'll fly out over that canyon, and we'll see if we can find Melanie's body together. And so Etta said, okay, sounds good. She turned and she left. But then just an hour later, Etta came back into the police station with her 2 young kids in the car, and she would tell that detective that she actually just drove out with her kids to that canyon and had found Melanie's body. In fact, she told the detective that her 7-year-old child, who was in the car right now, had been the one to actually find Melanie's body. The detective could not believe this woman, 1, had gone out by herself to do this, but 2, had brought along her kids as well? Like, what's going on with this person? But regardless of how weird this was, the detective immediately rounded up some backup, and with Etta's help, they went out to a particular spot in this canyon, and sure enough, when they got out there, right in the spot where Etta said it would be, was Melanie's badly beaten body. And so it was at this point that the police captain had grabbed Etta and said, you're under arrest. I'm putting you in a cell because there's no way you could have known about this unless you were somehow involved. The captain thought by putting Etta in jail for a couple of days, she'd get scared and start talking. But 4 days had gone by and Etta had not cracked. She had not given up anything beyond telling the undercover police officer that she thought her story that was kind of still developing would likely be turned into a movie. And so the captain really didn't know what to do because at this point, Etta had not actually committed a crime. It was not a crime to find a dead person's body and report it to the police. And there was no evidence that actually tied Etta to the murder. All the police had was the fact that Etta came to them and told them that she knew where the body was, and then they actually found the body. But that's all they had. But the police captain would catch a break on that 4th day because he would receive a phone call that would totally change everything about this case. It would turn out on December 17th, 1983, so the same day that Etta would go into the police station to report that she knew where Melanie Uribe's body was, well, on that day, Etta was at work listening to the radio and filing some paperwork. And as Etta listened to the radio, the local newscaster was talking about Melanie Uribe and how she was missing. And the newscaster talked about how police had found her truck and it was parked on this dead-end street, and that police were searching nearby residences to see if maybe they knew what happened to Melanie. But as of right now, there really was no new leads. They did not know where Melanie was. And it was right around this point that Etta's listening to the news about Melanie that Etta heard a voice in the room she was in. And the voice said very clearly to Etta, she's not in one of those houses. And Etta immediately, when she heard it, she turned around wondering who the heck was in here, who's talking to her, but there was nobody else in the room. And then it was like immediately there were these flashes of images in Etta's brain that she had no idea what they meant, but it was a succession of a dirt road and then a bush and then something white, a nurse's shoe. And Etta very clearly saw these 3 images. And it was right then that Etta thought, oh my God, I know where Melanie Uribe is. And so she sat there wondering what to do, and then finally thought, I have to go to police, as crazy as this sounds. And so she hopped in the car and she drove to the police station and she...
And that's the reason why some people never go, like, if they have suspicions or have those intuitions, they never go to the police. Cause they don't want to get themselves involved.
Right, because if you don't have much evidence and I'm coming to you and it's bizarre.
And I know all this
You know what I'm saying? And it doesn't make sense to you in your head, in your mind, then you're going to automatically implement me in this whatever crime.
Some type of suspect.
Yeah.
Or
have some type of involvement in something.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Or know who done, something.
You know more than what you're letting us
yeah.
know. You be like, nah, I just know what she was.
Trying to help. Won't do it again.
As crazy as this sounds. And so she hopped in the car and she drove to the police station and she said, I don't know how, but I do know Melanie Uribe is right there in that canyon. But when the police had said, come back tomorrow and we'll go out and look for her, Etta just couldn't wait. And so she had gone with her kids, driven out to the canyon that she had seen in her mind. And sure enough, when she got out there, she found the dirt road that she had seen. Then she found the bush that she had seen. And then with the help of her kids, they found the white nurse's shoe, and it was right near Melanie's body, which meant that voice that Etta heard and the vision she had all been real. The phone call that the police captain received on the 4th day that Etta was sitting in jail and talking to the undercover cop, the phone call that changed the whole case, Well, the phone call was from another police officer saying they had just arrested 3 men who were caught bragging about beating and killing Melanie Uribe, and they had confessed, and they were now being held in jail. And so clearly, Etta did not commit this murder, and so even though it made no sense that she just knew where this body was, the police had to release Etta the same day, so she was released, and then ultimately the 3 men who confessed to killing Melanie Uribe, they would be found guilty, and they would each be sentenced to life in prison. 6 years later, Etta would sue the police department, and she would win the lawsuit because the jury on that case absolutely believed that Etta really did have a psychic vision that led to the discovery of Melanie's body. Etta would never go on to make a movie about her story, and in fact, when she was asked later on about why she said that during her conversations with that undercover cop, Etta would clarify that she didn't say that she wanted to make a movie, but rather she said to the undercover cop something to the effect of, it feels like I'm living out a bad movie. And so that was kind of misconstrued by police into her saying, I want to make a movie about this. She didn't and has never made a movie and in no way has sought out any fame or recognition for what happened.
All right, Etta.
You still all right, Etta.
Rest in peace to Melanie, though. And without her, well, I'm wondering. Well, I guess they wouldn't have found her body so quickly. Because if the dudes were bragging about it and then they went and arrested them, they may have like, hey, this is where we, dumped her body at. They may have, told them since they confessed. But I guess it would have been like, a little while, a few days, a week or so, however long it took them to arrest the guys.
I done seen them guys before. Like the mugshot, I swear I feel like I done seen the mugshot before. I just so that was her, Etta back in the day. Yeah, she doesn't come off as a
no.
And then my thing is was that the only time she ever had a vision, or has she had other visions before or after? Yeah, since so that because you know what I'm saying, like after hearing something like that, if I did, stumble across. It does make you hesitant or you want to let people know because you be like, I don't want no involvement because you never know what your involvement can lead to. Because I'm not going to jail for no bullshit.
Right, or even just you telling someone, not even just a police officer, but maybe telling someone else. People think you crazy.
And also, the one thing I was thinking about is her kids.
Yeah.
Did y'all take her kids from her? Did they get placed into...
While she was locked up?
Yeah, you got to think about stuff like that, though. And
got the kid. Yeah.
Well, this was the 80s, so they don't have they ain't have check DNA and check evidence like they can nowadays. That's the reason why I ain't finna lie on that one because what I was about to say is totally wrong and false.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know, crazy story though for sure.
Most definitely.
Because I ain't see that one coming at all, man. But crazy ass story.
For what happened. On the night of November 7th, 1860, a 51-year-old American politician walked inside of his modest 2-story home in Springfield, Illinois. This politician was totally exhausted, but he was also really happy because in his hand he had a telegram that confirmed he had won an election that he had worked so hard for and he wasn't sure he was going to get. And so earlier that night, this politician had been out basically partying and celebrating this huge victory, but now he was totally beat and ready for bed. Once the politician was inside his house, he picked up an oil lamp to light the way, and he walked through his house to his study, where he put the lamp down on his desk. He put the telegram saying he had won this election next to the lamp, and then the politician just collapsed into his sofa to fall asleep. But before he closed his eyes, this politician looked over at a mirror on the wall, and what he saw in the mirror made him gasp, and he sat upright and looked at it like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. In this mirror, this politician was seeing his own face, reflected as it should be, but then next to it was another face, and it was not his. It kind of looked like him, but it actually looked more like a corpse, like a dead person was looking out at him from this mirror. And so the politician, he stood up and began walking over to the mirror to get a closer look, but as he got closer, the dead person's face disappeared, and all was left was his own reflection. And so he's like, okay, I must have been dreaming that, that can't have been real. And so feeling very unsettled, this politician just went back over to the couch and he laid back down thinking, okay, just forget about that, go to sleep. But again, he glanced over at the mirror, and now that he was laying down again, he saw the two faces again, his own and this dead person's face. And at this point, he stood up and rushed out of the room into his bedroom where his wife was. Now, his wife was a very devoted spiritualist, and so the politician thought maybe he could tell her about what he saw in the mirror, and she could interpret it and tell him what it meant. And so he sat down and he told his wife about what he had just seen, and she would sit there for a minute pondering what her husband had just said, and then her expression on her face just totally changed. She went from intrigued to very upset, and in a quivering voice, she would tell her husband that what this meant was he would serve honorably in the office that he had just been elected to for one term, he would get reelected, but he would not survive the second term. Now, when the politician heard this, he immediately rejected it. And he said to his wife, there's no way that's true. I probably didn't even see a face in the mirror. I'm probably just so tired, I imagined what I saw. So let's just forget about it. But his wife was not consoled, and she fell into his arms sobbing as if he had just been diagnosed with some fatal illness. And over the next several days and weeks and months, this politician's wife continued to be so upset about this potential death omen that the politician had apparently had, even though, again, the politician is constantly telling his wife, come on, there's no way that's actually going to happen. And sure enough, over time, the politician's wife did sort of stop being so scared all the time that her husband was going to die. And the politician himself, he just kind of forgot about what he had seen in the mirror that night. And so he would go on to serve his first term in this elected office. He would be reelected for a second term. And then during his second term, on April 14th, 1865, this politician and his wife were out at a play in Washington, D.C. And during the last act of the play, a man named John Wilkes Booth famously snuck up behind Abraham Lincoln, who was this elected politician. He was the president of the United States in his second term. And John Wilkes Booth shot Abraham Lincoln in the back of the head, killing him. And so Abraham Lincoln would indeed not survive his second term, just like the mirror death omen had predicted.
I knew he was talking about Abraham because as soon as I heard Springfield, I said, who come from Springfield? I said, Abraham. That motherfucker Abraham. And I said, 1860.
I looked back over, I was like, the 60. I'm trying to think.
1860. Abraham Lincoln never crossed your mind?
I don't think no one crossed my mind, but I was like, I don't know
why.
why.
You see me with a big smile, I said.
But then when he said that he was out at the wherever the little
it
show,
took you that long.
it
took you that long.
When he said he was out at the show, I said, "Oh yeah, yep."
It didn't even take me that long. As soon as I heard he was going to serve one term and not make it to, I said, Abraham Lincoln.
I think I
said, but what's he in the 18s? I said,
1860
was in the 18s. That's crazy. So
that is crazy.
I wonder how true that fucking story is. It says strange but true, but I wonder because wouldn't we have already heard this story before?
It may be somewhere.
Shouldn't we have already heard this story before? Shouldn't we? I'm saying if it's 100% true story.
I feel like I done heard it. No, I was just I never heard the first part, with the mirror and the image. And
I think I heard something like this before.
But
so he basically saw his corpse, his own corpse, in the mirror, and it started him. Yeah. By him winning the election, basically signing his death. That's because you think about it though. If he never, to be honest, if he never was elected, he never would have been killed. They were upset with the action scene, So it's a lot of people.
Crazy.
Though.
That's crazy. And then knowing, I know, your wife knows. I mean, he knows, his wife knows.
But you just never knew when.
You just never knew the exact
when,
day.
where, or how. That's crazy. That's crazy scary, but you knew. I can make it the first turn.
Like, okay, I'm just gonna forget about it.
Hold on, why you just didn't try to? You wanted. Your wife told you gonna make it the first turn, but you ain't gonna make it the second turn. I just would have served that one turn. We gonna cancel. We gonna end this shit right now.
Like, look. Let me ask you something. So if I don't go to the second term, am I still gonna live, or they still,
Well, maybe they forgot about it. They put it like to the side of their head.
Yeah,
not necessarily
that's what
think about
thinking,
it because you got to think about it. He did 4 years as president. You know how much he had to go through. How much he constantly probably thinking about that.
Yeah, I'm gonna be thinking about it. You tell me I'm about to die my second term if I get reelected. Yeah, and so I got reelected.
So you went ahead and went for a second term, huh?
Hell no. I'm gonna go home. Thank you very much.
Thank y'all for the 4 years.
Y'all stressed.
Y'all be easy.
I'm good.
Damn, that's crazy, man.
Mirror death omen had predicted. On April 1st, 1984, a 28-year-old man named James Sevigny opened his eyes and looked down and saw his whole body was covered in snow, and a lot of that snow had turned red from what looked like blood. James tried to take a breath in, but as soon as he did, his chest exploded in pain. Then James began moving his tongue around in his mouth, and he realized there was this weird substance in his mouth, and there were all these sharp objects in his mouth. And so when he spit, he realized what it was. It was blood and shattered teeth. James began to panic and tried to lift up one of his arms, but it wouldn't move. And then when he tried to move his other arm, it did move, but that little movement hurt so bad he began crying in pain. So James is dealing with this blinding full body pain that he has no idea what it came from. He's looking around and he can barely understand where he is or what happened. But then James looked up kind of right behind him and he saw this enormous snow-covered mountain. Now, James had no idea what mountain this was, but in his head, he thought, I must have attempted to climb that mountain. James was a self-described climbing bum, which really just meant he lived out of his car most of the time and traveled all around the world, seeking out the most dangerous mountains in the world for him to climb. And so as James was racking his brain, trying to remember what happened, suddenly it all just came flooding back. He remembered he was here in the Canadian Rockies with his best friend, Richard Whitmore, and the two of them had attempted to climb this particular mountain. It was an 11,000 foot tall mountain called Mount Deltaform. And James remembered that as they were making their way up this mountain, they were hit by an avalanche. Now, James didn't really remember what happened once the avalanche hit them, but it would turn out he had fallen, along with his friend Richard, about 140 stories as this avalanche carried them down the mountain. For reference, that's taller than the Empire State Building, so this is a massive fall. And so as James is remembering that avalanche, he began looking around frantically for his friend, Richard, hoping that maybe he was okay and nearby, and they could work together to get out of this situation. And sure enough, at some point, James looked over and he saw there was a crumpled figure kind of lying in the snow that obviously was another person. And so James instinctively tried to sit up to go over to his friend, but as soon as he attempted to do that, he felt the blinding pain in his body. I mean, he is totally wrecked here, and he couldn't stand up. But James really wanted to go see his friend, so he kind of rolled over, and through the pain, using his one good arm, he crawled his way over to Richard. And for a second, he thought maybe his friend was alive, that he too had survived this epic fall. But as he looked down at Richard, he could see his chest was not moving, and his neck was twisted really badly, and so was his back. And so James knew his friend, Richard, was dead. And so James just collapsed into the snow, feeling unbelievable anguish and sadness and fear. I mean, this is the only other person out here. They are nowhere near civilization, and it's going to be at least 4 days before anybody even notices that they aren't back yet, because that was when James and Richard were supposed to be home. And now James is thinking, like, I can't even stand up. I can barely breathe. I'm so badly hurt. What am I going to do? And pretty quickly, James adopted the mindset of, unfortunately, you're going to die here. And this was something James had always thought would happen to him eventually, that a mountain would end up killing him. And here he was realizing that, yep, that's exactly what's about to happen. I'm going to die out here. And so James just kind of lay there, resigned to his fate, literally waiting to die. And after about 20 minutes, when his body began to go numb and he was starting to enter into hypothermia, James heard a voice from behind him. It was this woman who walked right up to him, and she said, "You can't give up. You have to try." And James, even though he was totally caught off guard that there was another person out here, there was something so calming about this woman and the way she was talking to him that without any hesitation, it was like James's whole mindset about this situation completely changed. Suddenly, he was not ready to give up and die. But now, because of this woman, he was going to fight to survive. And so, after kind of moving around and looking back towards this woman, she would say to him, "Put your coat on." And so James, despite the excruciating pain, used his one arm that still worked and kind of propped himself up. And then he pulled his coat out of his pack, which was lying near him. And very painfully, he slipped this coat over his broken and damaged arms. And then once the coat was on him, the woman said to James, "Now take a sip of water." And so James, without any hesitation, he reached over and grabbed his water. He unscrewed the top and took a sip, despite how painful it was to sip, even though the water stung his totally shattered mouth. And then after James put the water down, the woman very calmly told him, "Okay, now disconnect yourself from Richard's body and then use the tree right here to pull yourself up." And so he untied from Richard, and then using his one good arm, he grabbed the tree and he managed to hoist himself up onto his totally destroyed legs. And he couldn't believe he was even standing at this point, but here he was, up on his feet. And then the woman said, "Okay, it's time to move." And so James began walking away from the mountain, and this woman just followed along behind him. And for a long time, he trudged through this knee-high snow, barely able to take a step without this blinding pain coursing through his body. But every time he began to stumble or slow down or seemed like he was going to give up, the woman would very calmly urge him to keep going, keep moving. And finally, after about 4 hours of this horribly painful trek James was on, he came upon the camp that he and his friend Richard had built before coming over to this mountain to begin this climb. And so James quickly began moving towards his tent that was still pitched, that he knew inside had a warm sleeping bag and some water and food. And so as he made his way towards the tent, he stopped himself and he turned around to talk to his guide, to thank her for pushing him onward. But when he turned, there was no one there. And when he looked at the ground, there was only one set of bloody footprints that were his, leading all the way back to where he had fallen.
Think he had a ghost? Guardian angel? Somebody guided him away?
I don't like the ghost word, but yeah.
You say you don't like the ghost word.
I said, I would say a ghost, but yeah.
It's still the same terminology.
Whatever you want to say.
Ghost, spirit, guardian angel.
I guess you could say that.
You know what I'm saying?
I guess you could say that.
Because, out of all encounters, or was he just delusional? Because he was what he was going through. Because some people he was just delusional, man. He thought he was seeing it because he was, you know what I'm saying, going through hypothermia at the beginning stage. So that folks would have been like, "Hey, man, no, he was just out of it, man. He didn't know what he was seeing."
But technically, did he ever see her? He just always heard his voice, right?
He said he saw the woman.
He saw the woman?
Yeah, he would look. He said periodically he would look back to see.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I guess, yeah, okay.
And she treaded right behind him.
Yeah.
There was only one set of bloody footprints that were his, leading all the way back to where he had fallen. This guide, this woman, she didn't exist. James was totally unsettled by this and really didn't know what to do about it, but he knew right now the priority was just to survive. And so he made his way over to his tent and he attempted to get inside of it, but his hands were so cold and so badly beaten up that he couldn't use the zipper. He couldn't even get it open. And then finally, when he managed to use a tool to get it open, he couldn't open up his sleeping bag. It was like his body was shutting down. And so we thought, okay, I'll make a fire and that will be enough to keep me warm. But again, it's like his body was failing him and he couldn't do it. He couldn't start the fire. And so right as James is realizing that, despite making it to this campsite, he may not be able to survive because he can't use the campsite, he began to hear voices. Right away, James is worried that the voices he's hearing don't really exist, like this woman he had seen. But sure enough, just a second later, 3 skiers came around the corner and they saw James. And amazingly, one of them was a very experienced mountain guide and another one of them was a nurse. And so right away, when they saw James, they saw he was dying. The nurse rushed over, she made a fire for him, she got him comfortable, she put on warm clothes, and the mountain guide, he took off to go get help. And sure enough, a couple hours later, a helicopter arrived and they airlifted James out, and he would make a full recovery. However, it would take James years before he finally opened up about this mysterious vanishing woman who literally saved his life. Without her talking to him and urging him to go, he would have laid there next to his friend and died. But James, he was afraid to bring up that he had seen this woman in fear that people would think he was crazy. But when he finally brought it up, he would quickly learn that he was far from the first person to experience this phenomenon of having this invisible person help you. In fact, this phenomenon is common enough that it has its own name. It's called the third man effect. The third man refers to this mysterious vanishing person that steps in and helps people survive who have just undergone some horribly traumatic event. An example of somebody else who has experienced the third man effect was the very last person to escape the Second World Trade Center tower on September 11th, 2001 in New York City during the terrorist attacks. He was able to get out right before it collapsed because a mysterious vanishing voice told him exactly which direction to go until he escaped. And so, whether the third man effect is actually supernatural or just a trick of survivor psychology, we don't know. James, who is both an atheist and a scientist, says he does not believe that this woman who saved him was an angel or connected to religion in any way. Instead, he just said, it was a presence that I needed at the time that saved my life, but that is the extent of my understanding.
That is so funny, man.
God.
There are many.
It always happens to those. And they be like, I don't believe it, I don't believe it. It do always happen to those,
Yeah.
It always be the ones who be like, I'm a non-believer, but then they have something that happens that they can be like, hey, I can believe that, and they be still
like,
die
nope.
hard. Nope, that ain't what happened. It was just, the third person effect.
Yeah.
And they'll push that third person effect. They'll be like, see, I knew this was exactly what happened to me.
They got a death day. Look.
I already knew. I knew it wasn't nothing but that. Y'all think y'all know everything, but you never know, man.
I mean, but I guess if in his,
I say this with a lot of things, we'll never know.
Yeah.
Until we one day leave this earth.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know what's on the other side, no matter who you are,
right.
or whatever spirituality you believe in, or may not believe in. You won't know until you leave this earth, and that's when you find the true answer that you seek.
Yeah.
You
but
can
whatever.
only live life. My bad. No, you go.
You say you can only live life, but
No, you go.
no, I was just about to say whatever it is he believe or not believe.
Yeah,
I guess, and worked out in his favor. I mean, he survived. But
yeah, true. At the end of the day, that's all that matters is.
Rest in peace to his friend Richard.
Yeah, Richard.
Richard.
Yeah, I ain't write it down. But
Yeah.
Rest in peace to Richard, man. That was sad.
Yeah, most definitely sad.
That was sad and very traumatic.
And even,
And even what?
No, I was about to say, and even what you hear in the second voices, and then this man coming, and so happened his nurse
I ain't
coming.
hear a second voice. He heard several voices.
Or several voices.
But he could have just heard them talking.
Maybe so, but still, they was placed in the right place. Child, let me just mind my business.
You like they were put in the right position, the right place at the right time for him to
Let me
survive.
just mind my business.
But all of these are basically like strange but true, like more like spiritual things, or not even necessarily spiritual, but like
I guess
you can use the term spiritual events, because the first event you got the psychic. Well, she didn't even consider herself a psychic.
Yeah,
she just said
someone
spoke to her,
yeah,
and told her,
like this,
gave her visions,
yeah,
and she saw these. And then I'm like, for you, all you did was saw a path. You saw
a bush and a shoe.
And how did you know that? My only thing is, how did you know the fact that this was their location? That's what. But maybe you was familiar with the area, so I'll chuck it up to that. You know what I'm saying? Or possibly did she have some type of...
No.
With stuff like that, you really... She could have been an accessory. You don't never know. Shit. Oh. I ain't putting that on her, but I'm just saying she could have been an accessory. She could have been a getaway driver. You never know. A lot of females be getaway drivers. Don't put that past nobody. She might not be a murderer, but she surely is a driver. She drove her son up there. And why would you take your kids to a site like that? That you know is a possible body there. I'm not taking my child Cause that's traumatic on man. Some
Yeah.
shit just don't make no sense
Some
on that part.
Some people are different.
Then you got the
That's
other
not my
one.
business.
You got Abraham Lincoln who.
Yeah.
That one. I ain't gonna hold you. That one would have spooked the fuck out of me. Send my
See, right?
and
And then-
corpse. My corpse.
You telling me my second term I'm not gonna make it all the way through?
All right, that's telling me. All right, I can make it. So you said I can make it through the first one. Okay. I'm gonna do my first one. When they ask me to run again, I'm gonna say y'all good. I'm
gonna go head out.
I'm gonna head out. I'm gonna let y'all. I'm gonna let y'all have those. So y'all, that one was not necessarily.
But
spooky,
I wonder
but
what
crazy.
that like for people that believe in stuff like that. I wonder would that have like changed the fate of things. Like, cause what you
or
have
was he destined to?
But what I'm saying
at the
is,
time.
right, but maybe just not in that manner.
But the thing is, the events probably wouldn't have taken place because he probably wasn't. You know what I'm saying? He wouldn't been at so y'all would have had to try to get him somewhere else.
That's what I'm saying.
But she said during your second term. So if I ain't got no second term, what the hell that supposed to mean?
True.
So it cancels out. So shit.
So
I'm
you think
pay.
that's how?
That's how I feel like it works. And then the third one, I thought James was just knocked unconscious. Like he was knocked unconscious, and so at first I was like, so he's been like knocked up because he didn't know what happened. Then everything. So I come back to just imagine surviving avalanche like that. I know, right? Bro.
And then to like look over and your friend is like gone.
You want me to tell you one thing I always wanted to do as a child?
What?
Like I was like, man, I want to do this so bad. Like when I get older, snowboarding.
Oh.
I always used to want to snowboard, but the thought of an avalanche used to scare the shit out of me. Cause then I'd be like, how?
I guess you can't. I guess you can think about things.
Yeah,
like
you
that.
can. Ain't nothing wrong with thinking about an avalanche.
But then you'll never do the things that you want to do because you're gonna always psych yourself out.
It's a lot. That's what a lot of stuff you psych
I
yourself
know.
out,
That's
you
my
know what I'm saying?
point.
Like,
So kind of just.
I done did stuff that I've been afraid to do. Shit, I can't swim by sure beginning in water.
That's what I'm saying. So just do it.
But the snowboard, it's more than just do it. You gotta.
I mean,
learn
yeah.
how to get
No,
on
I'm not saying just go out there and do. Yeah, make sure you get some training and stuff and all that.
But hey, after that other video we watched, the dude got caught up on the.
Well.
Nah.
Well, you won't.
Nah.
Just don't go out there alone.
That's a little. You know. I don't know now.
That's what I'm saying.
That like when you start hearing certain shit, it just like red light. Slow your head down. There ain't no yellow light. Stop, motherfucker. You better not. All right. With that being said, y'all spell what's up in the comments, man.
Please do.
Y'all let us know y'all thoughts about it in the comment section down below. But as always, I do go by the name DJ Kid. This is
Sierra Nicole.
We are.
Yeah.
Had to go and get it, ain't no time to kick it. Got a stack of flip for my foes. Dollar. Please tell me you can hear me. Don't turn your back and don't neglect me. Just let me know if you need me. Dollar. Let me watch out for my